December 26, 1900. A relief keeper climbs 160 steps into a lighthouse and finds beds unmade, a clock stopped dead, and a meal laid out for men who will never eat it. 3 lighthouse keepers had vanished off the face of a Scottish island without a single body, a single struggle mark, or a single witness. Today, Eilean Mòr is a nature reserve. Back then, it was the last place on Earth James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald McArthur were ever seen alive. What actually happened in that lighthouse between December 13th and December 15th, 1900? Over a century of sea serpents, ghost ships, and secret logbook entries have buried the real story of the Flannan Isles. Some of it was invented for a poem, some of it was covered up by the men investigating it. And what actually happened, the real sequence of events written down by the man who knew these keepers personally, has been sitting in an official report the whole time. You're standing on Eilean Mòr, Big Island in Gaelic, 39 acres of rock in the Outer Hebrides, 20 miles west of Lewis, battered by the open North Atlantic on every side. There is no soil deep enough to hold a tree. There is barely soil deep enough to hold a man's boots. Local shepherds who graze sheep here won't stay past dark. They say the island already belongs to something else. Engineer David Allen Stevenson designed a lighthouse for this rock anyway. Builder George Lawson of Rutherglen spent 3 years between 1996 and 1999 hauling every stone, every rail, every drop of mortar up a 148-foot cliff by crane because no boat could safely land heavy cargo here in anything but calm seas. The final cost? 1,899 pounds, equivalent to roughly 215,886 pounds today. On December 7, 1999, the light was switched on for the first time. Here's what nobody tells you. This lighthouse wasn't protecting ships from Eilean Mòr. It was protecting them from the reef beyond it, the one sailors nicknamed the Seven Hunters. 3 men were assigned to keep that light burning. James Ducat as principal keeper, Thomas Marshall as second assistant, and Donald McArthur as occasional keeper. McArthur was filling in for the regular assistant, William Ross, who was out on sick leave. Ducat had a wife and 7 children waiting on Lewis. Marshall was younger, more junior. McArthur, by most accounts, had a temper. None of them knew this rock would be the last thing they ever stood on. You're aboard the steamer Arctur, sailing from Philadelphia to Leith, and somewhere near midnight on December 15, 1900, you look toward Eilean Mòr expecting to see the beam sweep the water. It doesn't come. The tower is black against a black sky. You'd think that alone would trigger an alarm. It didn't. The Arctur didn't dock in Leith until December 18th, 3 full days later. And even then, the report of a dark lighthouse sat unactioned. Nobody rushed a rescue ship. Nobody radioed ahead. There was no radio. The Northern Lighthouse Board simply logged it and waited for the next scheduled relief. Think about what you just heard. A lighthouse, the one thing standing between ships and a reef called the Seven Hunters, goes dark, and the response time is measured in days, not hours. Worse, the relief tender Hesperus under Captain Jim Harvey was supposed to sail on December 20th. It couldn't. Weather held the ship in port at Brestcleat until nearly a week after the light first failed. For 11 days, nobody set foot on that island. You're standing on the deck of the Hesperus on the afternoon of December 26, 1900. Captain Harvey sounds the ship's horn. He fires a flare into the gray sky. 3 men are supposed to run down to the landing to help you dock. Nothing. No flag on the flagpole. No provision boxes waiting to be exchanged, which was the first thing every keeper did before a relief ship arrived. None of the usual signs of life. Relieving keeper Joseph Moore goes ashore alone. He climbs the 160 steps. He finds the entrance gate shut, the main door shut. Inside, unmade beds, a stopped clock on the kitchen wall, and a meal sitting on the table, untouched. But here is what nobody tells you. There was no overturned chair, no dramatic scene of men dragged mid-meal. That detail came later, from a poem, not from Moore's own report. The real scene was quieter and somehow worse, a lighthouse that looked simply paused, as if the men had stepped out for 5 minutes and never come back. You would have made the same mistake Mòr did, assumed for one desperate second that the keepers were just out on the rock somewhere, doing their jobs. They weren't. Harvey sent men to search every inch of the island. They found the east landing completely undisturbed, but the west landing told a different story. A supply box shattered and its contents scattered, iron railings bent, a section of railway track ripped clean out of its concrete base. And this is where everything changes. Only 2 sets of oilskins, the heavy waterproof gear keepers wore in a storm, were missing. The third set was still hanging inside. One man went outside without his coat. That single detail would fuel a mystery lasting well over a century. Because if the storm was bad enough to kill 3 trained keepers, why did one of them walk into it unprepared? You're Robert Muirhead, superintendent of the Northern Lighthouse Board, and you knew these 3 men personally. You'd hired them. You had personally visited the island on December 7th, shaken their hands and said goodbye, not knowing it would be the last time anyone saw them alive. Now it's your job to explain their deaths. You examined the last written log entries. The final full entry was dated December 13th, but weather readings for the morning of the 15th were already jotted on a slate, ready to be copied into the official log later. That single detail matters more than it sounds. It means the men were alive and working their normal routine on the morning of the 15th. Whatever happened that afternoon. Your official conclusion, submitted January 8, 1901, 2 of the keepers went down to the west landing to secure equipment during dangerous weather and were swept away by a sudden, unusually large wave. The third man then went to help or to investigate and was taken by the same sea. Most people never connect these 2 facts, but Marshall had reportedly been fined 5 shillings once before for losing equipment in a storm, a meaningful sum for a working man's wages. He had every reason to run outside and secure that gear before it was ruined again. An accident, in other words. Ordinary, explainable, and devastatingly final, because no bodies were ever recovered, then or since. But an ordinary accident doesn't sell newspapers, and what happened next turned 3 dead lighthouse keepers into Britain's most enduring maritime ghost story. You're a newspaper reader in Edwardian Britain, and by the time this story reaches you, it barely resembles what actually happened. Rumors spread of a sea serpent dragging the men into the water. Others claimed the keepers had secretly arranged passage on a ship and vanished to start new lives. Some insisted foreign spies had abducted them. Locals whispered about the Phantom of the 7 Hunters, a ghost ship set to haunt these waters. Then, in 1912, poet Wilfred Wilson Gibson published Flannan Isles, and it's this poem, not the official investigation, that gave the world its most famous image: an overturned chair and an untouched meal on the table, as if the men had been interrupted mid-bite. Powerful imagery, almost entirely fictional embellishment. The answer will make you question everything you think you know about this case. A supposed logbook later circulated claiming Marshall wrote of a storm unlike anything in 20 years, of Ducat gone silent, of the normally hard MacArthur weeping, and all 3 men praying together, ending on the 15th with the words, "Storm ended, sea calm, God is over all." It's a haunting account. It was fabricated. Investigators later confirmed no such entries were ever made in the real log. Someone invented a diary for dead men to sell more copies. And the sea serpents, the ghost ships, and spies, none of it holds up against one simple, stubborn fact. There were no storm reports for the area in the days right before the disappearance, meaning whatever weather hit that island may have been a violent, localized event that no other ship logged. Strip away a century of embellishment, and you're left with 3 real men and one uncomfortable truth nobody wants to hear. There was no monster on Eilean Mòr. There was no conspiracy, no secret escape, no ghost ship. There was almost certainly just a job, a dangerous, unglamorous job, and the rogue wave that no man, however experienced, could have survived. That's the real horror of the Flannan Isles, not the supernatural version, the plain one. 3 working men went out to do their duty in a storm, and the sea took them without a trace, a struggle, or a witness. The light at Eilean Mòr still turns today, automated now, unmanned since 1971, but still guiding ships past the 7 hunters. James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald McArthur never got a proper goodbye. Maybe the truest tribute we can give them now is simply telling their stories straight. No serpents required. If this one stayed with you, tell me down in the comments what you think really happened out there. And subscribe for more true stories the history books left half told.